But now I want to talk about oil pressure. In an engine's life, there are 3 times that you might come up with an incorrect oil pressure. One is right after the rebuild. I mean, right at the get-go, right when you are wanting to start the engine up. Another is just after an oil change. And then the other one is much later down the road as things begin to wear out. You get excessive clearances. So let's talk about, you get a fresh engine rebuild, and before you start the engine, always before you start the engine, you get oil pressure. Take all 4 spark plugs out so the starter motor will spin the engine over briskly. And then run the starter motor for 20 seconds. If you don't get any oil pressure, you wait a little bit, try it again for 20 seconds. The duty cycle on a starter motor isn't very long. If you don't get any oil pressure, try it again and again. But after 10 times and you're not getting any oil coming out of the engine, nothing registering on the gauge, or if you've got a line disconnected into a can or a bottle, nothing's coming out. Well, then you always do the cheapest, easiest, simplest stuff first. So the first thing you do is prime the engine. A T-type, you can prime. There's a brass plug immediately above the oil pump on the block. Take that out, takes a 1/4-inch BSF wrench. You unscrew it and take your oil can, glug, 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 and fill up the oil gallery, and that runs back into the oil pump and helps get some oil on the gears. Then sometimes it starts then. Sometimes that still isn't good enough. So what we've done in the past is taken an airline, that kind of airline, and wrapped a rag around it and put it in the valve cover, taking your thumb and putting the thumb on the oil draft tube on the side, and as you're spinning it, pushing air inside the engine, so it's pushing on the oil, so it forces the oil up into the oil pump. When all that fails and you still don't have any oil pressure, then sometimes it's time to, well, still you're going for the cheapest stuff. So there's on a horizontal filter on like a TF or a vertical filter, TC or early TD, you can take the banjo bolt out of the pump, again, drool oil in there, turn the engine backwards. The easiest way to do that is have it on the ground and push the car backwards in 4th gear. The engine will turn backwards, and that'll screw oil up through the oil pump back into the sump. And then try it again, maybe with that line disconnected, and see if you can get any oil coming out. When all that fails, the sump comes off and you try to figure out what you've done wrong. And the most common things to have wrong on the inside of the sump are a misplaced gasket, so that it's sucking air instead of oil. Let's take an MGB engine, and you've just started trying to get oil pressure, and you spin and spin and spin, and nothing comes out. Nothing comes out of the oil line that goes to the oil cooler. Nothing comes up the gauge line. You got no oil pressure. So now you take the line off where it comes out of the block, just behind the distributor, the outlet line that goes up to the oil cooler, or in the later cars is short-circuited and goes right into the oil filter assembly. And you squirt oil down that tube into the engine, and again push the car backwards. So it screws the oil backwards through the pump and back into the sump. Then go ahead and make sure it's out of gear and pull the starter motor, and you should get, the oil shoots out of the engine about that far, burbles out. And again, if you do all that and you can't get any oil pressure, well then probably the easier thing to do here is to take the pan off. Although the MGB does have an oil pressure relief valve on the side of the block. And it could be that that is stuck open. Why would it be stuck open? Because it's dirty in there. That's not a good sign. So maybe you do that first because it's easier than taking the sump off. But in the end, the sump usually comes off. This is the reason that when you assemble the engine, you put gasket goo between the gasket and the pan and the gasket and the timing cover. The other side of the gasket, you use grease, a liberal amount of grease. Last engine I built for Craig, I think Craig West, maybe, we got all done and I chewed up almost an entire tube of grease. He said, I had no idea you used so much. I love grease, but he said, I just can't believe you use so much grease. But it's like you don't want anything starting dry and use it as mechanics glue. Anyway, use it on those gaskets so that when you take all those bolts out on the sump just falls off. It won't leak just because it's got grease on it. And it sure makes it easier taking off rather than having to use a great big hammer and pound the thing off because you've used some ultimate strong no leak gasket goo on it. And the most common thing that you see, that's what I sent out on the pictures, is that the bottom of a 5-main oil pump looks like this. So this is the outlet up here, and this is the inlet. But it's not the inlet on an MGB model. It's the inlet on a very different Morris car that isn't made anymore. So when they make this gasket, why don't they, can I get that in the right place? Yes. Why don't they just fill in this whole section here? Why do they leave this open? Because once in a while, I think there's a guy here in town, this gasket was very, very thin right in here. And he put it on and it wrinkled or something. And I don't know, he probably started the engine without getting oil pressure and wiped out all his bearings. It's so sad. You just got to make sure that this gasket is nice and thick around this outside edge. And if you make a gasket, don't even put this hole in here. It's not necessary for this pump in an MGB. The more common problem is that you've tried this gasket. I'm trying to do this backwards here. You've used this gasket, which is a great gasket for an MGA for an early B, a three main engine. But you can see when you put it on here. Oh, there's someone calling for technical advice. Let me turn this off. You can see that when this is, well, easy for me to say. Oh, there we go. So when you do this, it leaves a great big gap here, and the oil pump would much rather draw air in than oil. So you can never get any oil pressure. This is a really, really common problem rebuilding MGB engines because both of these gaskets usually come in the gasket kit. So how would you know which one to use? Now you got to be aware of it. That's why I'm talking about it now. Sometimes when you're built the engine and you're putting it together and you're trying to get oil pressure, you get oil pressure. It's okay. You start it up, but geez, you cannot get 75 pounds cold running at 2,500 RPM or so. All our engines, T-types, A's, B's, midget 1275s, not MGCs. I don't know anything about V8s. But just normally the oil pressure ought to be up around 75 pounds. And I just had a guy call me and he said, geez, I can't get above 50 pounds of oil pressure. And I said, well, what kind of oil you got? 2050. Okay, that's not it. What kind of oil filter do you have? If you've got a spin-on oil filter that loads from the top, unless it's 3.5 inches tall, it can actually block off the oil from getting through the filter. Some catalogs put the wrong filter down. So when you go into O'Reilly's or Pet Boys or Napa or something, you can end up with the wrong filter. So the proper MGB filter is about 3.5 inches tall. He said, yeah, took care of that. There's no problem there. And I said, well, then, since we're going for the cheapest, easiest, simplest stuff, I said, let's go, what about the oil pressure relief valve? And he says, yeah, I've already changed that. I said, oh my gosh, then you're gonna have to take the sump off. He said, I already did that. I already checked the gasket, put another gasket on it. And he said, I can't get my oil pressure above like 45 pounds. I said, here's the deal. Take the line that goes to the gauge, put it into a clear glass bottle, start the car up, just let the oil piss into the glass jar for a while and take a look at the oil. Is it oil or is it aerated oil with billions of little tiny bubbles in it? And he called me back up and he said, hey, you got it. It's aerated. He hadn't built the engine. He'd bought the car like this. So the only thing that will cause aeration is a leak on the inlet side, or, very bizarre, the rod caps are either put on backwards or they're mismatched from connecting rod to connecting rod. That allows the oil to squirt out under such pressure that it's an aerosol, and it gets all these fine bubbles in it. And once you got bubbles in the oil, you can't compress the oil, and so the maximum oil pressure is pretty low. So I sent him on the task of taking the bottom end of his engine apart. He said, I put all the rod caps back on the rods the way they were. I said, well, okay, but because he's been chasing this problem since he bought the car. And I said, okay, but it could be that they were wrong to begin with. Okay, so that's a possibility. But anyway, that's a really bizarre situation to have the rod caps wrong. But the aerated oil, if you've got oil pressure, which is in the toilet, at some point along your diagnosis, you can always take the oil line off that intermediate fitting on the bulkhead, the firewall, and put it in the glass bottle and just see if it's aerated. So last Friday, I had a friend call me up and he said, oh, I had my TC engine rebuilt. And he says, I don't want to start it without someone who knows what's going on. So I went up and we talked about what he'd done and so forth, and said, well, we have to get oil pressure. And I took the plug out of the block and squirted some oil in there, and then I just took the spark plugs out and ran the starter motor, and sure enough, the oil came up out of that fitting on the block. But I'm looking at it and going, holy Toledo, it's aerated, unbelievably aerated. Now he just had a shop put together the engine, so they probably didn't mix up the caps, not in an engine shop, but maybe they misplaced the gasket. I was in a guy's shop about, I don't know, 3 years ago, and he had a TD. They could not sort out the oil pressure. It was up, it was down, it bounced around, it'd be low. Every now and then they go high and then they come low again. And they had the sump off, they'd looked, they'd done everything. And I said, well, let's check and see if the oil's aerated. And sure enough, great big bubbles coming through in the oil. So I took the sump off And sure enough, a little tiny paper gasket where the oil filter, where the oil suction device attaches to the inside of the sump. Sure enough, that had torn and it was letting air come in. So checking for aerated oil with low oil pressure, you do it at some point, and it's a whole lot easier to check that first rather than taking the sump off the engine. I mean, you may have to take the sump off anyway, but at least you have a better clue as to what you're looking for. So after an oil change, if you have bad oil pressure, you got maybe too short of a filter, that can happen because these three parts in the life of the engine, right when it starts up, after you change the oil, and then when it's run in and it's got tens and tens and tens of thousands of miles on it. So right after an oil change, you should spin the engine without starting the engine, spin it without starting it, take a wire off the coil, whatever you got to do, with a key, and just wait until the oil pressure blips up on the gauge, then you're all set to go. Start it up and you should have that 75 pounds of pressure. After the engine's been run so many miles, the oil pump wears and it can't make the pressure that it's supposed to anymore. The oil pressure relief valve spring wears, becomes shorter than 3.0 inches, and the bearings copper up. I had some pictures of coppered up bearings in the email that I sent out. It's been my experience that somewhere shy of 100,000 miles, you can go into the bottom of the engine and replace, and this is a modern MGB, replace all four modern. There's no such thing as a modern MGB. Geez, the newest MGB is 43 years old. Anyway, we still call them new Bs, meaning the rubber bumper ones. So you go into the engine, you change the oil pump, you change the four rod bearings, you change three of the center, three of the main bearings, the center three. Can't change the ends, the way the caps are attached to the front and rear engine bearing plates, make it impossible to take the caps off. You can change the center three and the rods and the oil pump, and bingo, you got oil pressure again. It's working great. And that will extend the life of your engine. If you have to take the engine apart, you're looking at, you're in a shop, take an engine out of the car, rebuild it and put it back in, you can go through $6,000. And if you can put bearings in it for $500, hey, you can extend the life of the engine. You don't have to worry so much more about it. Let me go back to the X-Bag engine a little bit. There's an external oil line that runs from the main oil gallery at the left rear of the block up to the head. That's how the oil gets up to the rocker shaft. And there's a lot of oil that gets up there. There's an enormous amount of oil that gets up on the top of the engine on an X-Bag, more than is necessary. The result is that with all that oil dumping out up there, sometimes the pressure in the main oil gallery suffers and is lower than it should be. Our trick, we didn't invent it, somebody else told us about it, I'm sure, is you take the top bolt, the top banjo bolt, after that line goes up to the cylinder head, take that top bolt, tap it quarter 28, and then take a Holly jet, 0.45, 0.50, somewhere around there. Holly jet, which has got a quarter 32 threads per inch, but it's brass. The threads seem to be close enough, always worked for us. We should have been using a quarter 32 tap, but we used a quarter 28 tap. And just screw that Holly jet into the end of that bolt. Now it severely restricts the amount of oil that gets up on top of the engine. There's still plenty of oil that gets up there, but it doesn't dump out quite so badly, so your oil pressure on your T-type engine can be higher. The T-type T-type engines have, you can buy now an adjustable oil pressure relief valve. That's pretty handy. I made one for a Transverse 1275 that my late wife and I drove in our Austin, America. I made an adjustable valve on that, and you can crank it back and forth and get your maximum pressure. The maximum pressure should be around 75 pounds. Again, if you're idling, it's August, the engine's ticking over at 650 RPM. It's just unbelievably hot. It doesn't make any difference if the oil pressure goes down to 15 pounds or 10 pounds. It doesn't make any difference. As long as the moment you touch the throttle, the oil pressure flies right back up to the blow off. MGBs, you can see the oil pressure relief valve working on some of the cars because the oil pressure gauge flicks at idle. So the oil pressure, the valve closes, pressure goes up, valve opens, pressure comes down. Valve closes, pressure goes up. So that flicking is not abnormal, doesn't hurt anything, doesn't mean your engine's bad. If you don't like it, just ignore it at idle. So anyway, that's my comments. 20W50 in all the engines. That's your best one, and always get a really good oil filter. Your car doesn't have kidneys. So anyway, so that's my comments. So I will open it up now, and if you got a question, just take them as often as I can, and we'll talk about pressure. Judd, you're up top on my screen. What's up?
Well, all three, but primarily on my TD. Explain how the pressure relief valve works. I mean, I've heard people say put a penny behind it and you'll increase the oil pressure, but my understanding, it's a blow-off valve. It's exactly wastes oil. Is that right?
It's exactly a blow-off valve. It controls the upper end of the oil pressure. So it hits a value, and then it opens, and it allows the oil to seep back through the pump again.
Okay,
it's right on the pump, so the outlet becomes the inlet on that. It just feeds it right back into the pump.
Okay. So sort of as a test of is the pump still good would be to compress that spring more, and if the pressure goes up, then the pump is working, and if it doesn't, then you got a pump issue.
It's really it's odd to have a real bad pump issue because those gears are about that long. They're 2.5 inches long. There's a bunch of teeth on them. They move a lot of oil. But,
okay, so it's rare that would be the case. So it's more likely the worn spring.
That you always go for the cheapest, easiest, simplest stuff first. So yeah, and Moss does have that real nice adjustable valve that you could put down underneath there. What you can do instead of that's a 329.090 spring. Isn't that the one inside the oil pressure relief valve? You can get another spring and put that spring inside the bigger spring, just to add some more tension to it. Probably a penny doesn't work. Sounds cool, but it doesn't work. You need something very much smaller, something like small. I think even smaller than a 1/4-inch lock washer. 1/4-inch lock washer works great in an MGB oil pressure relief valve instead of the original shim, but T-type is a little smaller. It's just, you can put another spring in there, but it's like you get oil all over you. You put the whole thing back together. You start it up. You get it. No, it's too high now. Oh, it's not high enough yet. Take it back apart. You get that adjustable one. I know it's expensive, but you get that adjustable and you just crank it up to wherever you want it. So
sounds good. I would rather spend a little bit more money than I'd rather drive than fix the car.
Okay. Yeah, that adjustable valve is a real good idea. I don't know why there isn't one on the for A's and B's yet. And midgets, all three of them use the same style of the A series engine. The 948s, 1098s, and 1275s use the same valve. I think probably even the same spring. So, yeah. Any other questions about?
Yeah, John, I got a question. You broke up a
Yeah.
little when you were talking about it, about the oil pressure gauge on the bead ticking, and if you don't like it, don't watch it. What causes that again?
The pressure comes up, the oil pressure relief valve opens, it vents the oil pressure comes down to a point where the valve closes. The oil pressure goes back up until the oil pressure valve opens, comes back down till it closes, just flicks back and forth. That's all.
All right. Well, I was curious, and you say don't worry about it, so I won't worry about it.
Yep. Yep. 68 through 71 MGB has a electric oil pressure valve. Those things are they're not oil pressure, a gauge, an electric oil pressure gauge, and those things are just awful. They're never accurate.
75.
75 is always accurate. I mean, first of all, there's an exception to every rule, but the rule that oil pressure gauges are always correct is 99.99% true. Oil pressure gauges, for whatever reason, just don't fail much at all. So if your gauge says 45 pounds, it's probably 45 pounds. But 68 through 71, the electric one, it can say 45 pounds and it's 90. You just don't even know. They're dreadful. Any other questions about oil pressure?
You didn't
Yeah.
really touch on high oil pressure. Can you get too high of an oil pressure to be worried about it?
Sure. There's a kind of funny. There's a vent hole in the bottom of the block, so that when the oil on the MGA, so when the oil pressure relief valve opens, the oil can get past the valve and dump back into the sump. Once in a blue moon at the machine shop, they've knocked out all the brass plugs out of the engine and they put a brass plug in there. Now your oil pressure is linear with your engine RPM. So you get oil pressure, it's great. Start the engine up, rev it, oil pressure goes up to, I don't know how high, 300 pounds, and it blows the oil filter off blows the oil filter either apart or off the engine. So I have seen that, but that's grossly too much oil pressure. I just talked to a guy today who had he had an electric oil pressure gauge, and I said, get rid of that thing, get a real gauge in there. And he did, and he says, I got 90 pounds. And a lot of late model MGBs ran at 90 pounds. Usually after you get the oil in there and they run for a little while, it'll calm down to maybe 80. It's okay, it's all right. That's pretty high for a T-type. But the only danger in having higher oil pressure is that if you've got a leak in the pressure system, you're going to leak more oil at 80 pounds than you are at 60, of course.
Hey, John,
Yes.
I have a 57 MGA, and I drove it the other weekend about an hour away, and it was pegged at 80 pounds oil pressure the first half hour of the trip or so. And then the next time I looked at it, it was down to 70 and stayed at 70 the rest of the trip. Is that normal for it to drop down like that?
Once it gets hot, sure. That's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Question, John?
Yes, sir.
Any tips on starting a 1275 that's been sitting for several years?
Again, take the spark plugs out.
Yep.
Spin the engine over, and your gauge will flick, and it'll, just under starter motor speed, it'll show 20 pounds or something. And once it does that, you know that all the galleries are filled with oil. If for some reason you can't get any oil pressure, then you go to the outlet again, which is just to the left, rear of the distributor. The big banjo bolt takes out maybe a 15/16 wrench or 1/16. It's really a BSF size. Then you spin that out and squirt oil down there, put the car in 4th gear, push it backwards. Easier if the plugs are out. That screws the oil down through the pump and down back into the cam. And then if you spin it over, the oil will burst out of that hole. But remember though, those banjo fittings are sandwiched. So you get the bolt that goes through them, but the banjo fittings are sandwiched with a copper washer on either side to keep from leaking. So be careful you don't lose those washers.
Got it. Thanks.
John, a question on the oil pressure relief valve. Is there kind of a maintenance cycle that should be replaced? And can it be replaced with the engine in the car?
Yes. So the oil pressure relief valve on an MGB engine lies at the left rear of the block. It's a hexagonal nut, takes an inch wrench, put the inch wrench up there, unscrew it, pops out, easy schmeezy. Can't get the valve out, can't get your finger in there, spin the engine over, don't start it, but spin the engine over and it'll blow it out along with a bunch of oil. It's a messy job. Then you got the valve, spring, and the cap. What you can't see is the spacer. There's a spacer that's about the thickness of a 1/4 inch lock washer, just a normal 1/4 inch helical lock washer. That's up inside the valve. You can add another 1/4 inch lock washer, twisted straight, take the helix out of it, twist that straight and use that inside the cap. And then you can put it back in. But herein lies the extreme difficulty, and that is putting that valve back in. That's a real coarse thread. It's a 1/2 inch BSP thread. I think it's 13 threads per inch. It's real coarse, but you have not got enough strength in your hand, in your wrist, to push that valve in, the cap in, and turn it and find the starting spot. So you take the spring in your left hand, and you use your right hand and turn the cap until it starts. Take it out, start it, take it out, start it. Do that 6 dozen times so you know exactly where that thing starts. You know where it catches the thread. Then go ahead and put the spring in, follow with a cap, push as hard as you can, which may not be hard enough because that spring's really stiff. And you get it up in there and you turn, as long as the thread catches, you're home free. But some people have used paint pencil to line it up, so you've got a mark to start it with. Other people have used screwdrivers, gone up there with screwdrivers and levered it and turned it. But it's just a horror trying to get that thing back into place. The only reason to take it apart is if your oil pressure is too low. And it's just one of the first things that you do before you drop the sump off, because dropping the sump off is easier, but it's more time, there's more time involved. Oh, just another comment about MGAs and early midgets whose oil pressure gauges, remember I said oil pressure gauges don't fail, but here I'm going to explain where one style of them does fail. The ones that are illuminated from the outside, they've got a little band of diffusing plastic, sort of bluish diffusing plastic around on the inside. And sometimes, because it's just a length, it'll start to curl, and the plastic will sort of hang down just a little bit. Not enough really for you to see, but enough to catch the needle as it comes up. So it might be that you start the car up, and no matter what RPM you're doing, you're only getting 30 pounds of pressure. Like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, when you slow weight, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So sometimes those do fail. You can take them apart, take the bezel off, take the glass out, expand that piece of diffusing plastic or rotate it so that it comes underneath someplace where it won't interfere with a needle. So.
John, excuse me, I have a question on the direction of oil flow in the filter. I've got the engine out, I'm rebuilding and in the reassembly process. I'm going to attempt to put in a pre-start oil pressure system. I saw one of those years ago. So I have a 12-volt gear pump and I'm preparing to put a pickup through the side of the sump with a pipe down to the bottom. So I'm making sure it's going to miss everything. And then I would, so that's a suction side. And then the pressure side would go to the oil cooler. And the oil cooler returns to the oil filter. And so my question is it worth doing this? Does the oil filter on the return, does it go to the pump or does it, will this pressurize the system?
It will if you plumb it correctly, but oh my gosh, what a lot of hassle. I'll tell you what would be a whole lot cheaper. And that is a push button and with one side going to ground and the other side going to the distributor side of the coil. And you turn the key while the push button is being pushed. Car can't start until your oil pressure gauge flicks, and then let go of the push button, it starts right up. That would be so much easier. That's two wires. One you got to drape down into the engine bay. But what year is it?
It's licensed as a 69, but it's
Okay.
so many features of a 68. It's a European car. And so
Oh, all right. Okay.
it has features of 67, 68, and 69.
Sure. It's hard for us to tell those cars apart because they got the steel dashes and all that kind of stuff. But the rest of it seems like just a mammoth task. But the direction of the oil, which is what you asked, it comes out of the block to the left rear of the distributor, comes out there, goes through the oil cooler or not. In the MGA, there was a pipe that went right to the oil filter. 1975 through 80, there's either a hose or a pipe that goes right to the oil filter. It goes around the outside of the oil filter, squishes through the oil filter, and then goes into the pipe that's standing straight up. What kind of oil filter do you have on your car?
The spin on top.
Okay, a spin on it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, so that the oil goes into the tube, and from there it goes out into the main oil gallery and oils all the components, all the bearings. So the oil
from the oil filter, it goes to the gallery and various components. So that would pressurize the system. Yeah.
Yes.
Very quickly, John, slightly off topic, if you don't mind. In doing my cam timing, I've got, after doing all the degree wheel stuff with the standard key and the dots of the sprockets lined up, I've got a 97. What does...
It's fully open at 97 after top dead center?
Yeah.
That's really early. What does the cam call for?
104.
Yeah, how are you measuring it? Do you have a stop on the piston so you know where top dead center is exactly? And
yeah, I have a dial indicator with a magnetic base, and I've got the center, the PDC on the piston, and then I've gone to the #1 intake push rod, and got that top zeroed. And with the standard key, it indicates 97.
Yeah, that's probably too early. That's pretty aggressive. I'd get a 5-degree offset key.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah, it calls for a 104. So do I need to go from 97 to
oh, well,
104? That's a 7, isn't it?
you've corrected me on my math. Yes.
Okay,
And,
but
I'm
but
just,
a crank, one tooth on a crank is 9 degrees, is it not?
I should know this off the top of my head. Every time I go in to do it, I have to count them again and so forth. I don't even know how many teeth there are in that crank gear or on the cam gear. Of course, it's double on the cam gear, but
Yeah.
so you can fiddle with it that way so that you'd only have to move it 2 degrees, sure, if that in fact is the case.
But that's very likely a real number than the 97. That's, I'm wondering how, if I screwed it up. I've done it so many times now. I only do it once every 12 years. I did, I last rebuilt this engine in 2011. So.
Okay. Well, the way that we used to do is we'd have the cylinder head on, and we'd put a tool down the spark plug hole that would limit.
The engine's out and it's on the engine stand, so no head.
Okay, so you roll the engine around until it pistons at topmost, set your dial indicator to 0, and then come up till you're like 20 thousandths away from top dead center, and then bring it back down the other way until you're 20 thousandths after top dead center. Average those 2 marks on your front pulley and make sure that you've got your top dead center between those 2 marks. Same thing on the camshaft. You turn the crank until the cam's right at the very top, set it at 0, and then check the cam maybe 30 thousandths before top and 30 thousandths after top, and average those. And that will give you because you can't, the piston comes up and you can't see, I'm moving my hand, but the piston comes up and just hangs there for like 4 degrees. It just doesn't seem to, I mean, it's moving, but it's moving. Just, you can't even tell how much it's moving. Same thing with the camshaft, although it's more. It hangs at full open for a long time. It seems to. Catch it coming up and catch it coming down and average them, and just check it again. If you're not sure, I don't know if I got a YouTube video up about that or not. I can't remember, but if you're unsure, you can call me tomorrow and I'll walk you through it again. So it seems to make more sense.
Okay, are you you're available at your noon hour slot? Is that?
I am. Yes. Yep.
Okay, I'll thanks for that so far, and I'm sorry to get off topic.
It's okay. All right. So do we have any more questions about oil pressure?
John, I have a question.
Okay, I got Sean up on my screen here.
John, I see advertised for the T-types, flexible hoses for instead of the copper hose that goes to your filter from the pump.
Oh,
Is that are they just, should I be concerned if I keep the hard lines, or is that a good idea switching to flexible?
well, if you got hard lines that work, I wouldn't switch them. But if the filter comes loose, it's going to work hard in the lines, and the lines are going to split. But if the filter's tight up against the side of the block, and the lines are really tight, you shouldn't. There's no problem with the steel lines.
Thank you.
I didn't know that the flexible lines were available. That's kind of cool. That's cool. You could have a remote filter if you get them long enough, which I'm sure that they don't make them long enough. They make them long enough to fit the filter, but yeah, it's probably cheaper, far cheaper. Excuse me, less expensive, far less expensive to make the flexible lines than it is to make steel lines that line up correctly, because those are all those are all, those have got some pretty strange angles to them.
I
John,
think those flex
Abington
lines are
Spares
about
had one.
150 bucks.
What was that, Fred?
I think those flex lines are about 150 bucks for the
Yeah,
pair.
well, so how much are steel lines?
Well, they're copper, but I don't know if you can even find those, used.
Okay. Sometimes there's the copper ends, brass ends, but the line between them is, am I thinking right? It seems to me there's steel, but whatever. Okay. Thanks, 150 bucks. But you got to have, I mean, you've already spent $40,000 on the car. You got to make it run. So yeah. So okay, what somebody else was in there too.
John, yeah, John, is the mechanical pressure gauge on the later cars directly replaceable for the electrical gauges in the 1970 models?
Yes. So 68 through 71, the gauge is located in almost impossible place behind the dash. So to change it to a mechanical gauge, which is wonderful, because that the mechanical gauge is 72 through 76. You've got to drop the steering column, and then you've got to be very. My fingers are real big. I did this on a guy's car about 4 years ago. It's almost, I kept thinking it'd be easier to pull the dash, but it's never easier to pull the dash. The dash is not on one of the earlier cars like that, the way the wiring's all stuffed behind there and the speedo cable, and oh my gosh. But it's really, really difficult to do. But yes, it is replaceable. And I have done that. So you get the mechanical gauge, you get the capillary line and run that down to a fitting on the firewall, the holes right there. You can use a 1/4-inch bolt, fits the intermediate fitting, the little copper fitting, and get a new line from the engine up to there, and you've got real oil pressure. Yeah.
Hey, John.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, John. Yeah, wouldn't it be best or prudent, since it's so hard to change that gauge, be nice to start the motor up first and hold the gauge out in the engine bay and see if it's not leaking? The capillary line up behind the dash.
I've never seen a capillary line leak.
Oh,
Not once it's tight on the ends. There's a little leather gasket. The leather. We always replace it with an O-ring, but a leather gasket that goes on the back of those gauges, where the capillary line comes up and goes over the threads.
yeah.
Hey, John,
Yes.
this is Crystal in Central
Yeah.
Texas.
Yeah.
Hey, I was just checking on Moss on converting from a 70 oil gauge to 72 oil gauge. Yeah, not all of those parts are available, so they're going to have to go ahead and get a used one. All right, the gauge
That's
is not
right.
available.
But
Okay.
they're almost always used oil pressure gauges work. So there's a couple places. There's a place in Alabama called Matthews something, foreign British something. There's Team Triumph in Warren, Ohio. There's my favorite spot to go to for used stuff is Paul Deershaw or Ian, now at Sports Car Craftsman in Denver. And there's another place, somebody told us about another place in upstate New York last week that's really good, that they've got the stuff and they'll send it to you. So you just need those three pieces. You need the gauge, the capillary line, and the intermediate brass fitting that goes on the firewall. That's common from, a TD all the way up through a 1972 MGB. It's the same part. And then of course a new line from the engine to that intermediate fit
Okay, good. Thank you.
is just a terror. It's when I did it, I dropped the steering column. That's no small task, because you got to get the steering column out of the steering U joint. You know, but once the steering column is out underneath the dash, then at least you can crawl underneath there and get your hands up there and see what you're doing. Now, the next thing is, can you really do it? It's always better to get the true oil pressure. And even if you buy a new sending unit, which is a Bernoulli tube with a gear on it and a little thing that wipes against a rheostat, it's just marvelous British engineering. It just doesn't work very well. That's all.
Yeah,
Hey,
I've already
John.
gone through one of them.
Yep, yep. Time to if you can crawl underneath there and get the pieces. It's so. But I did it. I'm carrying 2¼ pounds, 2¼ pounds, and I'm 5'10". I've got great big hands, so I was able to do it. So if you're smaller than I am and you've got more nimble fingers, it should be far easier than the job that I had to do.
Yeah, smaller than you.
Okay.
Hello, John. Hello, John.
Yeah, Doc, how you doing?
I'm doing great, buddy. 1971 MGB with allegedly rebuilt engine, but many years ago, 10 years, and not put back in service until recently. Tried to get it going, couldn't get oil pressure. Finally, we were Vaseline and all. We got oil pressure, but very low, about 30 at 3,000 RPM or something like that. And it had a rod knock.
Oh,
And my understanding is that there were some bad connecting rods about 1971 or 70. No?
no, I don't think that's the problem. Not after a rebuild. I've never heard there were bad connecting rods. You can argue all day about the design, but I've never heard of a bad rod. But once you've picked up a knock, it's got to come back apart again. That's
All right. What we did is put some the thick oil from Lucas thick oil.
okay.
All that went away. It would only knock or make a noise for maybe the first half a second or second and then it would
Before you had oil pressure. So
Yeah,
this is a common thing. 68 and 69, when they changed the oil. This isn't your car. 68 and 69, they had a top-loaded element. It took the same felt insert that the MGA, the MGAs and the TF and the magnets and so forth all took, that was bottom loaded, but they had a top loaded, and those drained out. So as soon as you'd start the car, you had to fill up the whole oil filter container that would then held the filter before you got any oil pressure. In 68, 69s, those things will rattle, and all of a sudden it's just gone. And
Exactly.
Oil pressure is great. So
that happened with regular oil, with 20W50 oil. Put in some of the Lucas thick oil, and it didn't happen. I mean, the noise went away.
Okay.
But now gradually, I think it's coming back a little bit. Again, I'm not sure. We did up the oil, put the little, went through your process of using a very strong wrist to put the new shim in the
but you
in
can
the oil
still
pressure relief valve.
But you're still stuck with 30, 40 pounds of pressure.
Now I'm getting 50 plus pounds of pressure with the thick oil.
But you got an electric oil pressure gauge.
No, we put in a mechanical.
Okay, all right, okay,
a mechanical gauge. Didn't run it through the little gidget at the firewall. Just ran a straight pipe all the way through.
Yep. Okay.
Through a hole in the firewall, and yeah. Interesting enough, the electric gauge is still in place. We put the mechanical gauge out on the right side of the dash and just put a bracket there.
Sure.
And but the mechanical gauge works perfectly. And we're now getting up to 50 pounds of over 50 pounds pressure, drops a little bit, maybe 45 after it gets hot.
Yeah, you don't
But
want.
down at idle, it's 25, but it still makes this sound when it first
Yeah.
starts up.
So you can't run the engine less than 50 pounds. You're just asking for trouble, which you may already have. So take that line off the engine and just put it into a can or a glass bottle and start it up after it's run for a little bit, and just see if the oil coming out is just straight oil or if it's aerated. I mean, it's a real cheap trick to do.
We did that, and it wasn't aerated. It wasn't
Okay.
aerated, and
So either the oil pump isn't making enough pressure, or the bearings are the wrong size, or they were incorrectly installed, or, but it sounds to me like the sump has to come off the engine. You don't have to take it out of the car. You can take the sump off the engine in place. I've done that lots of times. You don't have to jack the engine up. You can just do it in place and get it down and drop each of the rods apart. Look at the bearings and just see what's going on.
I
we
wonder what
looked
about
at
the
the
oil
oil
pump?
filter too. We were looking for to see if we had any pieces and parts in the oil filter. Tore the whole oil filter apart, and there's no metal in the oil filter at all.
Okay. So Fred suggested there might be something wrong with the oil pump too, but you still got to take the sump down. So
Actually, I misspoke. I was actually thinking, I wonder if the oil filter doesn't have the chuck valve in it, so it drains down like the canister does.
So Doc, you ought to be using a Napa Gold 1068 filter.
Exactly what's there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like that some
we
should
were
come
looking
off.
for,
So
we thought if the thing is really eating up the bearings, then we can find pieces in the oil filter, but we didn't. The oil filter is perfectly clean.
Yeah,
you're
gonna have to do some exploratory surgery.
All right, drop the pan and look at the
Yep.
the bear. You cannot take the connecting rod and the piston out from below. You got to take it out.
No, but you can sure take it apart and take a look at the bearing. You can plastic gauge the bearing. So
and can you modify the bearing in place or just put in new bearings?
Yeah, your only option is to put new bearings in or take the engine out of the car. If there's anything wrong with the crankshaft at all, the crank journal ought to be just smooth as a china plate. If you can run your fingernail in it and catch any ridges or something, it's game's up. Got to come back apart.
These are the mains or the rods.
Both.
Both.
You can get 3 of the mains out, the center 3 mains out, and just to look at them, but do it, and just see what something's wrong. Maybe the wrong bearings are in there. I mean, I can't believe you got that good oil pressure with wrong bearings, but something's going on. So.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
John?
Yes.
George Barberi.
Hey, George.
I had open heart surgery.
Oh,
4
my
valves,
gosh.
4 lines replaced, upper and lower heating hose, and heater hose myself to the engine, both of them. So I had 4 bypasses. And I want to wish everybody the best tonight. I'm going to leave the meeting. I didn't want to wait to the end because I didn't think I was strong enough today to even come on Zoom.
You're in the hospital yet?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I've been here for 7 days so far.
Oh my gosh.
And I'll be going home maybe a couple more.
So they use some Makita saw then to open up your sternum and
yeah, I had the best in Buffalo, and he did a beautiful job. He said I would be out here much sooner, but I had other complications. But I wanted to say thank you to you
Hey,
and good night to everyone.
all right, George, thank you very much. Thanks. I'm gonna hit the mute all button because I got some background noise, some plates going into a rack here. So, all right, so now, do we have any more questions about oil pressure? It's 8:10.
Yeah, I got one.
Yes,
We're talking about my 39 TB.
okay,
And when it starts off, the pressure runs up around 90. And once I get going, it stays rather high until I run for a bit, come to like a corner and stop. And then drops down, of course. And then when I start back up, it'll drop or come up to about 60 and ride a little longer. And then do the same thing. I'll come to a stop, drops down to 20, comes back to about 40. And that's where she stays for the rest of the trip. Now, you just mentioned below 50 is a no-no.
that's correct, but on a T-type engine, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Number one, where are you reading the oil pressure from? Are you reading it off the block or off the head? Where does that?
Whatever on, geez, I don't know where it's coming. I don't know where the line to the gauge is coming from off the top of my head.
Originally, it came off the head, and you get this massive, massive oil pressure drop right at that point. So you get a more. It's not original to take that line on that X-Bag engine and flip it upside down and read the oil pressure off the bottom. It's not original, but you get a lot more accurate reading, which is what you're after. Then the next thing is to put that reducer in the top bolt, the Holly jet, the 0.45 or 0.50. And now you're actually reading what's going on inside the engine. But geez, it seems to me, Skip, that it's probably the bearings. Probably the bearings. It's not the oil pressure relief valve because it's getting up to 90 sometimes. So the sump comes off pretty easily, you know, and you can drop.
Well, you replace those, the lower ones, when you got the engine started and they actually adjusted the pump at the same time.
Okay.
And it hasn't had that many miles on it. We're talking maybe a few hundred at most.
Okay. So there's still something going on that when you hit the throttle, does the oil pressure rise real slowly or does it snap right up?
It kind of moves up right away.
Okay. All right.
It responds, and if I'm coming down a road and I just put the clutch in and let it coast for a bit, it drops down around 20 and holds there.
Well,
as soon as
yeah.
I give it gas, up it goes again.
Okay.
It's just that initial hit of around 100, and it's been that way since day one. Day one being when it was in your shop.
Yeah,
you put a new spring and all that stuff in there.
Yeah.
In I don't know how many years this has been, but
probably 10. But it's time to plastic gauge those bearings and just see what's going on. But it depends on how much you're driving it. If you're not flogging it, if you're just sort of going smooth cruising around town and everything, but getting on Interstate 69 and driving down to Shipshewana or something or other, that's asking.
Those days are over.
Okay. Okay. Right. So call me tomorrow. We'll talk.
Okay.
We'll talk some more about it.
All right, will do.
Thanks.
Hey, John,
Yes.
you made a comment early on about high volume oil pumps.
Oh,
being
yeah.
Slow on delivery pressure. Can you explain that just a little bit?
Well, the oil pump, I happen to bring one here. The oil pump is designed so that the oil is always sitting inside the pump. So the gears are always full of oil. But when you make that cut down underneath here, then the oil pump drains when you turn the car off. Therefore, when you start it up, it takes longer for this chamber to fill. So it's just, you just have, and it isn't necessary anyway. It's just hocus pocus. I did it to my car. That's where that nice picture's from. I wasn't going to buy a high volume oil pump. All it is a Dremel tool, and you grind away at it. It's in the Huffaker, how to make your car go fast. Pages in the Bentley manual, or if you get a Joe Huffaker, engine preparation book. And I thought, well, I want the high volume oil pump, because then the oil doesn't have to go all the way up to the top up here and flow back in. It's short circuits. It gets sucked right up off the bottom. But the problem is that it drains out.
Okay, so if I wiped out number one cam lobe, would that have been due to poor idle, possibly on the 1500 engine MGA, or?
No, that's just the way it is.
Just the way it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's a faulty cam. You can make a case that you stop using zinc, oil with zinc in it for too long. But it is probably going anyway. It's probably soft or something. So
okay. All right. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Oil pressure.
Yes, John. I've got a 78B.
Yes.
And at an idle, it always drops down. And I was told years ago that's probably because might have lugged the engine or somebody did. I don't really have the history of this engine. It sat in the barn for years. It leaks like a sieve, so I'm going to pull the oil and replace most of the seals. Is it worth going through those bearings just to get it off?
How many miles are on the odometer?
Well, it's about 30, but that's probably 130,000, of course.
Yeah, just do it. But it's not necessary to pull the engine out. Now, you do have to pull the engine out to change the rear seal, no question. Yeah. But everything else you can do. In my Latin class, it was in situ, but now everybody says in situ. So you can do it in the car. You can do everything except that rear seal. If the rear seal's leaking, then oil's coming out that dangly split pin in the back. And if it's leaking out of there, then sure, then take the whole thing out. It's easier to manhandle. On the other hand, you don't need to take it out. It's a lot of stuff to take off. You can get the sump off right in place. And you got to struggle with it a little bit, but you're lying on your back. So any day you can work lying on your back or sitting down is a good day. Unless you're on a hoist and you got to have your hands all extended up in the air.
You still need to raise the engine a little bit, right? To get this oil pan?
No. You want to use a snake wrench. I didn't bring one, but a 7/16 wrench with a snake on the end of it. Not really an offset, but I can't think of the proper name for the wrench. That and a 1/4-inch drive, 7/16 with a swivel. You can getting them out, it's no problem. It's getting them back in, and you use a screwdriver to hold them up into place. And a wrench just to turn it, or you can take the whole engine out. The reason that the car leaks oil is either what I call passive leaks, not static leaks. You can have those too, but passive leaks, like out of the side cover. There's no pressure behind there, but there's a lot of oil, and that's where it always leaks, out of the front side cover. That is the primary spot for a passive leak. Active leaks are the oil filter housing on the right-hand side of the engine, right above the starter motor in front of the distributor. And there's a 3/4-inch bolt up there, or it takes a 3/4-inch socket, a 1/2 thread, huge, massive bolt that holds the oil filter housing onto the engine. and those are always loose. And if they're loose, then they're leaking. So that then you get a pressure leak. So those are far more dangerous leaks than the passive leaks.
All right, well, I'll take a look at that too. I had never thought about trying to get to the rods from underneath, but I'll give it. But I think I'm gonna pull it anyway and repaint the engine. It runs too good. And it looks like somebody must have boiled the block because there's hardly any paint on it at all. There's a little spot of gold, but that's it. So I just want to
Is the engine ID plate still on it? The aluminum ID plates is 18V883 or something on it?
It's something like that, yeah.
Yeah, then no one's boiled the block. Literally, no one's boiled the block and no one's cooked the block, because in both those circumstances, that tag disappears.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm just going to get all cleaned up anyway, so we can before we repaint.
Okay.
All right. Good to know.
But remember,
Remember,
when you start to take an engine apart, it develops an appetite, because anything you look at is going to be worn, right? I mean, you're going to look at the rod bearings and you say, oh my gosh, look at that. They look just like that email that I got from Twist, and they're all coppered up, right? And you look at the main bearings and you go, oh my God, I mean, if I'm doing the center three, I ought to do the ones on the end, but I got to take the engine bearing plates off to do, I'll just take the flywheel off and the rear plate off, and I'll take the front cover off. Oh my gosh, look at the slipper on the chain. That's all chowed up. Oh, the chain's all sloppy. Oh, by this time the lifters are out. Oh my gosh, look at the bottom of the lifters are all chewed up. So just be
good point.
Prepared.
So should I just live with the low oil pressure at an idle?
Oh, it doesn't make any difference what the oil pressure is at idle. It can be 5 pounds.
Okay.
As long as the moment you touch the throttle, it shoots right up to the blow off.
Yeah, it does that. Okay. I'm probably looking for more work than I really need.
You can paint it all in place. Yeah, I'm just because if you start taking it apart, you can change the side covers.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You don't have to change the rear side cover. You only have to change the front side cover. And the gaskets that you buy are real thick. No, you can't use those. Those bend out of place and they leak. So you go to Napa and you buy some cork, and you make it your own gasket that sticks out, and there's plenty of room on it. And you use an 1/8 of a tube of the right stuff or ultra black or something in there.
Yeah.
I don't like using heavy duty gasket glue almost anywhere. Sometimes you got to use it, but there is where all the leaks come from, that front tappet inspection cover.
Okay. Thank you.
Okie doke.
Much appreciated.
You're welcome. Still taking questions about the oil pressure, and then we'll get into the chat section.
John,
Yes.
you mentioned banjo bolts and the copper washers.
Yes.
Is there any need to anneal the copper washers when you reassemble it?
Oh, if you know what you're doing and you want to have fun doing it and heat them up red hot and everything, you can. But my experience is that they're just fine. They work just fine.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Quick question.
Yes.
All right, if you're replacing the electrical gauge system with the mechanical, and I'm putting in a new copper line, do I need to bleed that line to get it full of oil?
No.
Awesome.
The gauge will read air just as easily as it reads oil. And the funny thing is, if you disconnect that from the back of the gauge and just let it sit there and start the engine up, you'll get a little drip of oil out of there like every 2 minutes. It's just unbelievable how little oil can get through that line. It doesn't spray. It's but anyway, no, it reads air pressure just as well as oil pressure. As long as it's getting pushed, it'll accurately do what it's supposed to. If you want to bleed it, you can, but it's unnecessary.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, John.
Hey, John, I have a
Yes.
question. I have an opinion question about.
Yeah.
The TC we have has always had 60 pounds oil pressure.
Yeah.
Fairly steady, no problem. I switched over to the Doug Pelton's stainless wrapped rubber lines because, you know, I wanted to try them out and see how they worked. And they are a lot easier to install because they don't have to have the exact angle on them.
Yeah.
And the pressure is a steady 40 pounds. And Bob Gannot told me the pressure would drop with the rubber hoses. So I'm assuming I'm getting the same amount of oil out of there, but
No.
the gauge went down. And now it's a steady 40 pounds. And if I put
No,
the
that
hard pipes
does,
back on,
well,
they would, yeah, go ahead.
Bob knows what he's doing. But I mean, something's different here. You're not getting the same volume of oil through there. That's my first gut.
Yeah, no, he said
Bob knows more about it, but
yeah, he said if he went to those not the hard lines anymore on the early pumps like that, that the pressure would drop, and it did. So I'm assuming the pump is working as it always did, and the oil pressure is still steady, but it dropped from a solid 60 to like it's a solid 40, 42 all the time.
That's oil pressure. You got to have enough oil pressure there to protect the crank and the bearings.
Right.
And that's not enough.
You don't think that's you think it's a problem with the hoses, or
it must have to do with the volume.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you even check?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
How would you check? You would you'd put the steel. Well, Fred said there are copper
I wonder if you
lines,
could
but
splice in another gauge in the line somewhere and see what it's reading.
well, it's the same gauge. It's hooked up the same way. I was going to say take put the steel lines back on instead of putting the line to the engine. Just have it come over to a bottle and pull the starter motor without the spark plugs in and let it run for 30 seconds. And you get a volume of oil, and then put the other lines on and pull the starter motor and let it run for 30 seconds. Do you get the same amount of oil? Do you get less? There's something's weird going on here. I'm not comfortable with this. But Bob Gannot knows.
Well, I mean, Bob said I would get a drop at the gauge. He didn't say it was good or bad. He said expect it to drop at a gauge.
Yeah, but that's you're reading the oil pressure
know.
off the the top of the head properly or down below where you get a more accurate reading.
Yeah,
that doesn't seem like a good
so
thing to me.
So you're saying that the line that comes from the filter to the block, that's the one to measure it out of? Don't let it connect to
well, in that case, you're running it through two lines, right? You're running from the pump to the filter and from the filter to the block. So it's like two resistors in an electrical circuit, right? Two restrictions.
Which I didn't catch. Which line would I put into the jar to catch?
Oh, the one that should go to the block.
Yeah, from the filter to the block. Then.
Correct.
Okay.
So you just loosen it up and spin it around somehow.
Yeah.
What a friggin' mess. What a mess. But I mean,
Doug Pelton says that's all he uses on restorations now is those lines.
Okay,
so
all right.
I'm not sure. I mean, they gave me the impression that I'd be moving the same amount of oil, just this is lower pressure.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. That's why I'm kind of curious. I mean, I put them on there to see how they work, and they're really easy to use. But that's why I want to ask you. I'm curious what you thought of that. Okay,
I wonder what the inside diameter of those lines is.
I don't know. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking, John. If the inside diameter is larger, so all of a sudden you're pumping the same or even a lot more oil through a larger pipe, the pressure is going to drop.
No, it'll build up to a pressure and hold that. I'm worried that the line's smaller and it's not moving as much oil. If you're not moving as much oil, then the oil that's going into the system, you get a certain use in the system, right? The rods and the cam and the mains and everything it's dissipating. And you're providing a certain amount of flow, but the rate of use remains the same. I'd be interested to talk to Bob know about that. Did Bob just come through some kind of heart surgery? Did someone tell me?
No,
Granola?
minor problem, I think, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Nothing major, no, he's fine. I
Okay.
just talked to him the other day, he's
All
fine.
right, okay.
But I'll check with Doug too, I'll see what his opinion of
Just
on that
you
is
know,
too, yeah. Yeah, I was under the impression that it was moving the same amount of oil, but you're right, it's moving the same amount of oil, but not the same pressure of oil. So, I mean, the pump didn't change, I don't think, and you know, but yeah, all right,
Could be that
thanks. Good to know.
the hose themselves are softer and they're expanding and taking some of the pressure off.
But once they blow up to a certain size, then that's, I mean, if they continue to expand, yes, but if they blow up to a certain size.
Yeah.
But if they expand to a certain size, then you're also losing, you're gaining capacity because now you've got the hoses are actually creating more space.
Right. So that's I'm not a hydraulic engineer, but I worked with this stuff for a long time. It's just what makes sense to me, you know. So
Well, I think these have a steel braid on the outside, so they shouldn't expand.
Well,
Yeah, they're wrapped like that, yeah, but
Okay.
again, I don't know the inside diameter of them
yeah,
as opposed to
I
the
bet
hard
it's
parts, yeah.
I bet it's a smaller inside. I mean, it only makes sense to me that it's a smaller inside diameter. So.
All right, I'll just go back to the hard pipe and see, I'll try what you said and see. It'll be a mess for a day or two, but I'll see how that works, yeah, okay. That's worth, I mean, I'm just curious, I'm just curious how this is gonna work, but.
A real mess.
No.
Absolutely, yeah.
You haven't seen my garage floor, oil's not a problem, believe me.
Well, if you got an MG in your garage, I mean, I know what your
That's
garage
right.
floor looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Where is the gauge in that system? Is it before those lines, or is it after those pressure lines?
It's originally on a TC and an early TD, you read the oil pressure at the head. So it came out of the filter, into the block, into the main oil gallery. Right from there, it goes up through an 1/8 inch capillary line that runs up to the cylinder head and dumps out. You get this huge pressure loss right at the cylinder head. So you're reading this massively reduced pressure. So what most T-typers have done is reverse that fitting so that you're reading the oil pressure off the main gallery. And then you don't have that pressure loss. You don't have to deal with that. If some of the old T-typers, I mean, the TCs and TDs, they indicated 40 pounds. But if you reverse the line and put it on the main gallery, bingo, you got 65. I mean, it's just the pressure drop at the head was just enormous. So.
I was going to mention that I have a snap-on oil pressure tester gauge.
Yeah.
And I loaned it to a friend of mine because he was concerned about his oil pressure on his MGA, rebuilt engine and everything. But he said that the original Jaeger gauge was about 6 or 7 pounds lower than the snap-on gauge.
Okay. Okay.
So you can always check your oil pressure with another gauge and see if your gauge on
see what the true, but if you're using the same gauge, it may not be accurate, but it's probably precise. So if you're losing 20 pounds between one set of lines and the other, then that ain't that ain't right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the old adage fits with the gauge as much as a clock. A man with one gauge will tell you the pressure. A man with 2 gauges, never quite sure.
Yeah. You'd assume that the snap-on gauge was accurate and precise. So maybe an old Jaeger gauge isn't quite as accurate. So, all right. Well, we've run this. It's 8:30. Oh my gosh, we've been talking about oil pressure. I should have brought this up a year ago. This is a hot subject. So, but I want to get into the chat section here. So here, let me start here. There's a bunch of notes in here about oil pressure. I got to come up to the top. I have a 73 MGB Roadster. This is from Doc Rosevear. How often do the hoses from the engine to the oil cooler fail? Do they fail suddenly, catastrophically? There is slight cracking. There's slight cracking on the outside, like there's slight cracking on a tire, because Fred was telling us the other day that there's stuff in the rubber that evaporates or it sublimes or something or other. And so the composition of the rubber changes a little bit. But Doc, they do not fail suddenly. They start weeping first. And the original oil pressure lines are, I can't even remember having seen one that failed. Replacement lines, yes, that's real embarrassing. You think if Ed Cook thinks he's got oil on his floor, imagine one of those lines blowing underneath your bonnet at speed. I mean, even before you look down at the oil pressure gauge, you'd know something was wrong because you'd smell and feel and see and taste all the oil that was dumping out underneath there. But the original hoses, as far as I know, are great. They do work. So John Tershak, I need the correct Glacier Blue. Have gone to all the paint jobbers around my area, but color comes out more green than blue. Does anyone out there have an item that was painted blue so I can get it scanned, or if anyone has an item off their car? So let me tell you that Paul Deershaw at Sports Car Craftsman has that panel that goes behind the front wheel on A's and B's, and the back side of that rarely is attacked by anything except just air. And if anyone's got a panel that's original Glacier Blue, that's it. But if someone does have Glacier Blue and would like to offer it to John Tershak, you can either put a note in chat and tell John where you can, how you guys can get in touch, so he can borrow a piece to get it scanned, or John, you can go to Sports Car Craftsman and see if they'll get it scanned. I don't know. That, maybe you got to put down a $200 deposit or something or other so that they're sure that they get it back, something like that. From Charles, everybody.
Hey, John?
Yes.
Quickie, if he's looking for just a touch-up, all right, there's a company called Touch Up Direct. Tell him to go to touchupdirect.com, and they have matching paints, and I've used it on mine, and it matches really good. They're
Really?
expensive. Yeah, they're
Okay.
expensive. All right. They sell it in pens, so that you can just spray a little bit. Or if you're really expensive and you feel risky, you can buy a quart like for a couple $100.
And get that scanned and get some local stuff made. Well, all right, okay. What's that place called, Crystal?
It's called touchupdirect.com.
Touchupdirect.com. Okay. I can't believe they've got MG colors, but okay.
Yep. They
Hey.
got MG colors.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to post it over here in the chat for him.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Touch Up Direct. All right. I'll put it over there.
All right. So Charles, everybody, I need a new fuel pump for my 53 TF. What do you recommend? Quite frankly, I recommend that you get a pump from, this isn't going to work if I can't remember his name, Akron, Ohio, Tom Ball. So Tom's a jeweler. He takes original SU fuel pumps, rebuilds them. The quality that you get from him is better than anything you can buy new. But you got to find Tom Ball. You can contact me tomorrow and I can give you a telephone number. Otherwise, I would buy a point style pump that's designed for whichever ground you have, whichever earth you have, negative earth or positive earth. I'm not a fan of electronic pumps. I've seen a lot of electronic pumps fail. With a pump with points in it, you can get out of the car and you can beat it. You can beat on it and you can make it work again. You can turn the key on and off repeatedly and you can get it working again. Electronic pump, when it's dead, it's dead. And I do not like the aftermarket pumps, especially on a T-type. You can make a case for them for a B or something or other, you know, the $39 pumps. But I'd either get a rebuild pump from Tomball or buy a new pump and get it designated for whichever ground you have on your car. It only makes sense to have a car with a negative ground so it matches everything else in the world. But if you are insistent on a positive earth car, then you got to buy a positive earth pump.
John, does he, since it's a TF and the fuel pump is located in the ridiculous place of over the rear axle, does that have the same pressure as a TD where the pump is right up on the firewall, or does it need a higher pressure?
No, it's a high pressure pump. Unless it's up on the firewall, because one of the pumps, the earlier pump, draws more out of the pump, and then the fuel falls sort of to the carburetors. The better pump, that's why they moved it. The better pump pushes it up there, and those are called the high pressure pumps. And the length of the solenoid changes from about like that to about like that between the two pumps. But thanks, Judd, for saying something about that. Peter, oil filter, which direction is the oil flow? From the pump, through the oil cooler, into the filter, into the engine. And then Peter McCarthy, I think maybe I answered this. Any tips on starting a 1275 engine that's been sitting for several years? Like absolutely spin it and get oil pressure before you start it. David Quinn, I'm getting ready for GT48. Hey, I'm going to be there. Matter of fact, the next Zoom session, which is the 12th of June, I'm going to try to do from the hotel where GT48, GT, the NAMGAR guys, when they set it up, instead of calling them a convention or anything else, they called them a GT, a get together. So anyway, Tershak, you're on right now. Did you get that information about the paint color?
No, Mike.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So anyway,
He doesn't have a mic, but he said it's the whole car, not just a touch up.
Right. But if he buys the touch up, then he can get that scanned and get enough for the whole car. No matter how you slice it, it's expensive. So anyway, Dave Quinn from Jackson discovered both rear axle rebound straps were broken. Doesn't make any difference. Left after 14,000 miles and right after 34,000 miles. The left was the style with the metal inserts in the rubber. Not sure the other, because I haven't removed it yet. New ones from Sicilia are solid rubber. I've since learned Moss has nylon ones. Any recommendation? Well, the nylon ones are tough. Dave, are you still on? The nylon ones don't have any give to them. They come out, that's it. It's not quite like having a chain, you know, pulling a car where there's no give, but almost. The rubber ones are better, but I know we had some that we timed. We put them on a rear axle, and before we put the springs underneath the rear axle, we just had the rear axle hanging from the straps. And this is, of course, from the major supplier. I think one of them failed after 20 seconds. That's probably when we stopped the test. Anyway, they didn't last very long at all. And I don't know if the one Cecilia has are better or not. I know what she'll tell you. but I don't know it, but they aren't necessary anyway. They keep the car from, they keep the body of the car from coming up too high off the rear axle. But, you know, if you're driving down the expressway or if you're going over railroad tracks or competing or something or other, you need them. But geez, half the MGBs out there don't have one or both.
Okay, thanks, John.
It's not critical. Yeah. All right.
Thanks.
How'd you come out on your rack and pinion? Did you get some oil in there finally?
I
called
don't
me-
know, rack and pinion.
You
one of
talked.
the issues that we talked about was me trying to get onto Zoom.
Oh, well, sounds like you're on now. Maybe you're on with your telephone?
Yeah, well, Apple support came through finally. They dug into the bowels of my computer. So.
Okay, all right. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I will see you down there. John Mine. John Mine, you can come on now. Hi, John. I've got a 1980 MGB LE with an intermittent charging problem. I replaced the alternator, bought a voltage meter that plugs into the cigarette lighter and to track the battery voltage. When I fire up the car, the battery voltage goes up to 14 plus, or it starts to drop. No rhyme or reason what to do. So, John Mine, you're on now.
John?
With your yep, with your barking dog. Yep. And but I see you.
I shoved her out. So I solved the problem.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, you with the dog or with the alternator?
With the alternator.
What did you do?
Well, while I'm on this call, I figured, you know, so I bought one of these cheap Chinese voltmeters that plugs into the cigarette lighter plug.
Yeah.
And you know, I start up the car and drive away, and the voltage, you know, it'd go up to 14, then kept dropping to 13, 12, 11, 10. Oh my God, this is crazy. I go, I don't know if I trust this voltmeter. So I had a digital voltmeter, you know, the kind with you buy and use in the shop, hooked it right up to the battery. And so I'm using my phone for the audio. So I just jumped in my car with watching both voltmeters, and the digital voltmeter that is my regular shop voltmeter stayed rock solid at 14.4 volts or so, but the other one just kept dropping and dropping. So it's just a piece of crap. And it's been more than 30 days now, and I can't return it. But anyhow, live and learn, die and forget most of it.
Well, hey, that's good. But in case other people do have alternator problems, before you buy an alternator, you take the clamps off the battery, clean the battery post, you clean the clamps, clean the top of the battery, make sure the battery's full of distilled water. I mean, you top it off with distilled water. You go underneath to the starter motor where the main battery cable, which is as big around as your finger, comes up from the battery. You take that nut off, 70 through 80, that's a metric nut, 13 millimeter. And the exercise wrench you got to have is an 8 by 125 thread, and you undo the nut, take all the brown wires and the battery wire loose, tighten up the nut on the solenoid, put them all back on, tighten it back up again, then go to the alternator and pull the individual plugs out of the plastic container that holds them, the plastic plug-in thing. And you go down there with a little tiny screwdriver, and you can bend the spade out of the way and pop them out and crimp them just a little tiny bit with a pair of pliers, so you're sure they're making good contact, and put it all back together. And if you're still having a problem, then go for the alternator. But any of those a loose connection in any of those places will cause a Lucas alternator to fail. So you want to get rid of all the possibilities to begin with. Anyway, good.
Thank you very much.
Glad it works. Yeah. Here we go. Judd just talked about that Moss adjustable pressure regulator. It gives us a part number and so forth. Not the price though. Mark to everybody, $78.
$145.
$145. But You know, your choice is either that or changing springs inside the pump about 8 times to come up with, which is what we used to do. All right.
20 out of done the work. Age 80, I'm going to buy the adjuster.
Yep. Okay, mark to everybody, a 78 MGB. Don't know the history. You've had it for 7 years, runs great. Sat in the barn for years. Leaks oil badly on the ground. Oil pressure's good running, but idle it's only 15 or 20. It's okay. Looking at pulling the engine, replacing all the gaskets and seals. Is it worth doing? Main and main bearings and rod bearings. Yes. Yeah, if it's been sitting for a long time, there's a whole lot of damage on the bearings, because chances are when someone stored it, they didn't store it with fresh oil, so it's got acidic oil in it, and you've got all kinds of little holes and stuff in the soft bearing material. So yes, it makes sense. Without taking the whole engine apart, you can only change the center 3 mains. In the bottom, that's easy. The cap comes off. It's not easy. You got to use a slide hammer. You got to use a slide hammer on that with a 1/2 inch fine deal that threads into your caps. You don't want to use a hammer to beat them loose. That's tacky. But you got to have a slide hammer. Anyway, you change the bearings in the cap. That's easy. They snap out. They snap in. But here's a bearing line between the block and the crank, and you can only see the edges of the top of it. What do you do here? Take a thin paint scraper, like a metal or plastic paint scraper, and push the bearing down. It'll roll right out, and you can lift the old bearing off, and you can put the new bearing in the same way. So it's whether you're doing it from underneath the car or whatever. Van Andrews, they sell a 1275 A series water pump without a bypass port. Okay. Is there any reason to omit the bypass? Well, it's a whole lot easier to fit. Did they have a moving sleeve thermostat that blocked off the port in the head? No, it's just like an MGB. There's a little tiny bleed hole in there so that you got some circulation before the thermostat opens. So it isn't like an old T-type with that real complex thermostat in there. And I don't know about that. You got to have some sort of circulation in the engine, so the engine heats up evenly all the way around. That's the reason that port is put in there. It's just a terror to change. I remember changing that little gasket and the little hose. It used to be a bellowed hose, and you could get the old one off, of course, by just yanking it and everything. But then the new one, you're trying to put it on and collapse it and get it on another tube. Oh my gosh, it's all but impossible. But when you're putting a pump on, you can put that hose on with the pump, and it's really easy. I'd get the one with the bypass. That's what I do.
Thanks, Sean.
I didn't. You got a 1275?
No, this is Donnie's. He's building one for his Morris.
Oh, all right. Okay. No, I think it'd be wiser.
Yep. All right, cool.
Okay. Don Morgan to everybody. Has anyone had experience with the new Castrol GTX Classic 2050, which is intended for older cars and has high zinc? I do talk to some people. I knew it was out there.
I've been using it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Works great.
We can't ordinarily get it here, and I'm just wondering whether anybody used it. Where most of us are using right now is Castrol 2050, and then we're adding zinc, and I sort of thought this may limited.
They sell it at Walmart, I think, exclusively.
I'm shaking my head. Don't play home chemist. Buy the oil with the zinc in it, and you can get Valvoline VR1. That's high zinc. That's great stuff. And Fred just said here that what Castrol's available at, what'd you say, Walmart?
Walmart.
Go figure.
Yeah, it's a 5 quart bottle for about $22.
Hey, sounds like a deal.
Bob and Gloria Clark would say yes too.
Okay. All right.
If Gloria's giving me advice, I'll gladly take it.
So we used to add zinc. I mean, when they took the zinc out, you know, that's all you could do. But now there's a couple of oils out there. AMSOIL's got zinc in it, but that's $22. I shouldn't even say. I have no idea how much it is. It's a real expensive oil. So in the synthetic.
John, it's Barney Gaylord.
Hey, Barney.
Got some input on the oil.
Yeah.
Most of the oil grades these days that are either 15W40 or 20W50, consider them as truck oil because cars don't use those oils since they put catalytic converters in them. 1975, they used lighter oil. So in these heavyweight oils, they didn't have to take the zinc out. And almost anything that's sold with 1540 or 2050 weight is going to have the zinc in it, about 1,200 parts per million. I go to Walmart and I buy the cheapest crap on the shelf, the house brand SuperTech 20W50, and it's got like 1,300 parts per million of zinc in it.
And how many miles do you put on your MGA each year, approximately?
Well, these days, 20 to 40,000. The car's got 600,000 plus on it. I put $250,000 on it in the last 9 years. The last engine that I just rebuilt went 200,000 miles on the camshaft.
Okay, so anyway, the proof is in the pudding. Okay, so you buy the cheapest ass oil you can find at Walmart, but it's truck oil. You have to read the label.
Well, it's not advertised as truck oil, but almost any 1540 or 2050 oil is going to have the zinc in it.
Okay.
I think a lot of the diesel truck oil has zinc in it.
You go into any like convenience store at a gas station and they don't have any oil we can use. It's all 010 or something like that, just like Barney was saying. So you've got to go to Walmart or one of the auto parts places. And I agree with what Barney just said. The zinc is there on the thicker oils.
If you go to the website, they always tell you what the zinc is in parts per million, and it varies from brand to brand. So that was sort of why most of us here are using the additive to it, because it just isn't it. But I think the basic Castrol GTX has got a reasonable amount. So I'm going to take Gloria's advice.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot, Barney.
Like you said, John, the VR1 is an excellent oil.
Oh, that's what I use. That's what I use. Although we used not William Penn.
Brad Penn.
Brad
Penn. Okay.
Green oil.
His brother. Yeah, we used a lot. We used a lot of Brad Penn oil, but it came with a high zinc component, and that was, oh my gosh, years ago. So
we still get it. Our club has a deal with them, and we can still order it by the case.
Yep. Yeah, you got to buy it in bulk. So yep.
Kendall has a high zinc oil as well.
Okay, it's out there. Yeah. All right. So other people weighed in here. Ben Andrews, Valvoline VR1, and Bob and Gloria, Castrol Edge 550 with high zinc. So the reason that the oils have changed so much is because now when they grind a crankshaft, when they're making an engine, they're measuring the crankshaft in the millionths of inches. So the clearance between the bearings and the crank is so much more precise than the crude engines that we have. Therefore, they can get by with thinner oil. They want to get by with thinner oil because when you're looking at the power plant, making the energy to push the car down the road. You want to use as little power as possible in the power plant to run itself, right? And the thicker the oil, the more energy the oil pump's going to take. And it's a whole, you're going to get your fleet mileage demanded by the federal government higher if you use thinner oil. So I think that's the reason that thin oils could come by. Let's see, Marty's got a note on here, and then we got Reg. Everybody off topic, probably not. John, we are still having MGA tranny problems. Could you talk about replacing the brass synchro with a steel and second gear? Yes. So Reg, make sure you send me well, call me with, so I can call you back because I didn't have your phone number. I assume you're calling from Vancouver.
That's right, John.
Okay. So there are two different gears. One gear takes a brass synchro, one takes a steel synchro. And if you put the steel on the brass or the brass on the steel, it doesn't work at all. And all I can tell you is that the engagement teeth on the steel gear have scallops around them. What does that even mean? I thought scallops were something you ate. So you have to see a picture of this, and I can send you a picture. I can't pull up a picture that fast here, but I can show you which one you've got. You can send me a picture of yours. Sounds like TikTok or something.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, what it looks like, the surface. But whatever you do, when you get the correct synchro matched with the correct gear, before you install it, you've got to lap those two together with valve lapping compound. And it's I'll be at the shop tomorrow in the afternoon. Call me in the afternoon. I can show you the tool I use for lapping. I use a lathe because I got a lathe. I mean, everybody should have a lathe, but you can also do it by hand. It's just a lot more laborious, of course. So anyway,
John, I'll call you. It'll probably be Wednesday on that, but it's kind of the story of a couple of other people's. We got this transmission 40 years ago. It had a brass synchro in it, so it had the steel synchro in it, and that's the one that would never go into second gear. And we had that problem. We tried to take it apart again. I think it's called a decant ball. There was one missing. We put the decant ball in, and nothing will shift. So then we read your article on the scallops, and on the weekend we're looking, and we got the tartar sauce out, but you can't tell the difference between the second gear with the scallop.
Yeah.
So
I'll
get some pics and call Wednesday afternoon.
Okay, I won't be in my shop, but I'll still be able to take the call. So that steel second gear synchro was introduced about 1965 in the MGB. It is better. That's what I've got in my MGA.
Yeah.
And then in 67, they made another massive improvement by increasing the diameter of the lay shaft. And then the next year they abandoned the whole gearbox and went to a 4 synchro, but that you can retrofit a lot of that stuff. So you just got to get the right stuff matched up, and I can help you get it sorted out.
Thanks again, John.
So send me an email tonight, and I'll when I get off, I'll try to send you that picture. I know exactly what the picture looks like. I've just got to find it. So
thanks very much. Will do.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, Mark Anderson. Would you have to bleed the capillary line when installing the mechanical oil gauge? No, we did that. Simon Boothroyd, marvelous engineer, but it just doesn't work very well. Oh, that's my comment about the British engineering on the, it's so complex. I had to take one of them apart one time, and it's just great. It does it. It's got a Bernoulli tube, that's got a gear on it, and that's attached to to what would normally be a needle, like inside your oil pressure gauge or temperature gauge up on the dash, but instead it wipes on a rheostat. It's just great. What NGK spark plug would you use in a 68B? I think it's a BP6ES. Is that right? I don't use NGKs. I use Champions. So you're looking for a conversion, and the conversion is a N9Y, November 9 Yankee, but then the N9Y became an N9YC, and then the N9YC became an RN9YC. Now it's an alphanumeric combination that is too difficult for the clerk at Walmart. Here we are back at Walmart. So they changed it to a number 415, but I think it's a BP6ES. I think that's the NGK plug, but I don't know for sure. Joe, would you please speak a little more about plastic gauge? Sure, plastic gauge is a cylinder. Imagine, here I've got my pen, it's a cylinder, and it's green wax, and you say the crankshaft is here and the bearing is here, and you put the cap on and you tighten it all up, and this deforms and it becomes it goes from round to stretched out. And so there's a little gauge that comes with the plastic gauge, and you just see how much it's spread out. And you can get plastic gauge that reads all the way from 1/2 thousandth all the way up to 3/1000ths, whether you get red or green plastic gauge. So supposedly, I've never believed them, you don't even have to clean it off the bearing. You can just leave it, check it and use it, but I never do that. I always remove it with my fingernail. Not off the bearing, you damage the bearing, but off the crank. So, and if it won't come off the bearing, then you use a spray carburetor cleaner and air gun and blow it off there. But
Thank you.
You have to use it when you're building an engine, just to make sure the machine shop is done the stuff right. I mean, that's all. Do you have to plastic gauge all the bearings? No. Usually if you do one main bearing and one rod bearing, again, the machine shop, if they got the wrong number, they've done all of them wrong, you'd hope, but it depends what kind of engine you're building. If you're building some very big monster engine that's going to be in some race and everything has to be perfect, well, then you're fiddle farting around with all that kind of stuff. Just like ring gap, when you check ring gap, you check every single ring. Well, you should, but in practice, maybe one ring per cylinder or something. So, because the rings are all the same and the cylinders are supposed to be all the same.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Hey, you're welcome. Brad, who's got a 52 TD. Here's the comment on Abingdon spares for the oil lines. Okay, so all right, but Ed's already talked to us about that. Chris Landry. Perhaps the oil volume increase and pressure decrease is due to the larger idea of the flex line versus the hard lines. I don't think that's correct. More restriction, more pressure. Yes, but we're checking the pressure after this. I'm thinking of the hoses as resistors in series. And then, so here comes up, here we got a bunch of stuff here, all in here about Simon Boothroyd, you like both those lines. You got an MG in your garage. I know what your floor looks like. Yeah, okay. So anyway, we've got a whole lot of people here. We got Pascal's Law and a lot of people coming in here. Let's see, Janice Salon, sorry I missed the beginning of your meet. What type of oil filter do you recommend for the 68 MGB with a spin-on oil filter conversion? Well, it depends on what kind of conversion it is, but the biggest filter that you can find, the bigger the filter, the better. And that works just like my understanding of the bigger the lines from the oil pump to the engine. The larger the filter, the better. So the top load filter, which was standard 1970 through 1980, except for half a year when they used a bottom load, tiny little filter that they used on the marina. Remember the Austin Marina? That takes just a little tiny thing, same size as like a midget 1500 or a midget 1275 or something. But just I don't know more than what kind of conversion you've got. Saw a picture of it. Maybe I could help you out. So John Tershak. Oh, just a note, I don't have a mic to talk, but I'm painting the whole car. Yep, we got that. Hey, Crystal. So we got touchupdirect.com. That's for John Tershak. Tom Ball's phone number, here it is, in Copley, C-O-P-L-E-Y, but it's a suburb of Akron. Tom Ball. So his phone number's in here. He does MG fuel pumps. We got Touch Up Direct. Oh, just check their colors, but no BU4 in their stock. So, oh boy. So now we're back to pleading with Ian out at Sports Car Craftsman. Nancy Kuno, 64 MGB high RPM miss. Hey.
How you doing, John?
Hey, how you doing? So is this the one with the Weber carburetor on it?
Yes, it is.
Did you guys clean that carburetor or change it?
We put a different one on.
And it still misses.
We still have the same. We put 3 different distributors on, 2 of them with new points, new condenser, 1 with Pertonics.
How about the coil? Did you change the coil?
We changed the coil.
What about the cap?
We changed different caps, yes, and different spark plug wires.
All right, so that's the entire ignition system. How about the spark plugs?
We changed those.
Okay. And we tried both two different Webers.
Yes.
Well,
and we changed different fuel pumps too.
Okay. All right.
We put the one off of our test stand on it.
Okay. So someone had proposed when I first got the call that maybe the valve springs were weak and it was starting to float. I don't know.
See, we're putting a timing light. We can put the timing light on any one of the spare wires. And when you read the tach at 4,000 RPM, it's just like you turn a switch and the tach will start blinking and you'll hear the miss.
Okay, so the tachometer is jumping around.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. The timing light.
Oh, okay.
We unhooked the tach from the coil.
Okay.
Also.
All right. Okay.
Don, could it be somewhere else in the car, not even in the ignition system, that he's got like a loose wire that's or a bad connection? So at high RPM, there's a lot higher demand and
or higher demand or a vibration. So you can run a hot wire from the thanks, Joe. That's a real good idea. You can run a hot wire from the fuse box to the positive side of the coil.
Okay.
You just try it. Just try it, and you can take a pair of screwdrivers, and although that's not going to show up on the timing light like that, but we're searching for something so elusive here. You put a pair of screwdrivers, underneath the rocker shaft, and just push down on the cap, and just make sure that all the valves seem to be the same tension. you know, one of them isn't abnormally weak or something like that. Yeah, from the test wire, that, Judd, thank you very much. The test wire from the fuse box to the positive side of the coil, and just
We'll try that.
Just hot wire it and just see, because if,
No, we'll try that.
yeah.
And I would try to disconnect as many other things as possible in case there's like a short downstream that's unrelated. Just try to isolate.
You could put a volt, you know, me who always says, throw away that meter. Don't use a meter. Well, here I am telling you, use a meter. Put a voltmeter on the positive side of the coil to ground, and just see what happens when you rev it up, and see if you start to lose voltage.
Right, but that needs to be an analog meter.
Well, otherwise it's scrolling like a gas pump. Yes.
Yeah, we have an analog. We can do that.
Okay.
How about contaminated fuel? Contaminated fuel, a little bit of water in the gas?
No, it's showing up with the timing light on all 4 cylinders. So it's not like it's just one cylinder. You can put the timing light on any one of them, and
it's jumping. It's jumping around.
Well, yeah, you can just see it with the timing light. It'll be real steady at 3,500, and when you go from 38 to 4,000, it's just like you flip a switch.
So now, are you looking at the timing light itself, or are you looking at the timing mark when it's missing?
I'm looking at the timing light.
Well, look at the timing mark and see if it's bouncing around there.
Right.
And also, although you did change the distributor cap, I've noticed that a lot of the older caps, if you measure the electrode in the middle of the cap for the high tension wire, it should be 0 ohms. But I've seen a lot of them that are older that are like 20 k ohms, and it starts missing at high speeds. So make sure you have 0 resistance on your center cap.
Okay. Something to check. We'll give that a whirl.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah, and then take an aspirin and call me tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, John.
Okay. All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Lynn called me up about that. So yeah.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, we were both there.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. Now we're down to Mr. Neary. And here we got MG Colors by years. How do you even pronounce this? Teglerizer.com, MG Color Index. So this is another one for John Tershak, but I'm sure you've seen that. Castro Zinc, everything's available on Amazon. Sure. Pat G, oil is like politics. Here we go. Says our man from California, oil is like politics and religion. Says I use Valvoline or Kendall. Castro leaves with a gummy something or other in the oil galleys. So zinc additive bad for the catalytic converter? You bet. You bet. It covers up the platinum in the converter and makes the converter not work. It covers up the catalyst in the converter. Now platinum's still there. It's just covered and can't work. So yeah, but white gum. So most engine wear is at startup. So thin is in. That's why we have much lower viscosity in addition to tighter clearances. Okay. So now we're down to the end and it's 9:19. So I think we are about down to the bottom. That's, oh, no, just a minute. Bittinger, you have a listing of the various sources around the USA like Tomball, that deals in used and rebuilt MGB parts. Yes, if you go on my website, UniversityMotors.Ltd.com or UniversityMotors.Online, there is a list of resources. What's that called, Marty? it's not vendors, but something like that. It's in the top ribbon. And there's a bunch of people on there. So it'll help. Oh, and Doug, 165 tonight. He says, I think I saw that too. So anyway, it's 9:20. We're done with our chat section. So if Doug Clark is on, we can have our hat contest. Doug, are you still on?
I am, John. I'll just make a quick detour to the closet to get my entry for this time, okay?
Our hat contest. Well,
Yeah.
He's gone. I don't think I had this on, but last time, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool. I don't know if you can read this, but it says United States Secret Service. This is pretty cool. I don't wear this in public. Oh, okay. We'll see what Doug has.
All right, John, this is my original, this is a straw boater made in Italy. Real nice, like in the old time movies when the guys would punch right through it. Well, this was something, it's Ponte Rialto, Venice.
Hey, very cool. All right.
So, yeah.
All right, well, we'll have to see what hats we have next time. So, yeah, we're gonna keep having our hat off here, you know? So anyway, thanks for counting tonight. I had a customer who was a United States Secret Service, and they were chasing a counterfeiter in Grand Rapids, and this guy had a TD. And so he came around, hung around the shop a lot, federal employee. And one day he shows up at the shop and he says, do you want to see $1 million in $1 million in counterfeit bills? I said, yeah. And he says, well, come on, follow me. So we locked this shop, and I know there must have been 8 of us that all walked down to this house. They didn't have the yellow tape out. Maybe they didn't have yellow tape then. But there were Grand Rapids policemen all posted all around the house. And these guys looked with extreme disgust at us, bunch of hippies, you know, and the Secret Service agent led us into the house, and we saw the printing press in the stack on the floor of uncut, I don't know, 20s or 50s or something or other, this massive stack of bills. Couldn't have been 20s. It would have gone from here to the moon. And later on, Rick came back and he said, well, this couple of weeks later, he says, I have to admit, he says, it wasn't $1 million. It was only, pick a number, 880,000 in cash. You know, the guy had purchased a printing press and had it delivered to his apartment. So the people that sold the printing press called the Secret Service. Then he went and bought the special paper and had that sent to his apartment. The people that sold the paper also contacted the Secret Service. It just didn't seem right. He was corresponding with one of his old cellmates in prison, telling him he was going to counterfeit the money. So they were just staking him out until he'd actually printed it. Anyway, that's how I got that hat. Let's unmute ourselves. I'm going to go into gallery view here, and I was gonna mention where Marty and I are real close to opening our new website and offering yet another real heavy duty intense technical seminar each month. And the first one, I think the first one we have is coming up in July, I don't know, I have my calendar here, but I'll send an email out to everybody, but you'll have to subscribe to the service, and then they'll be more intense and in more detail than what we cover here. Here it's general and we take all kinds of questions and so forth, but the first one I've got marked up, I think, Marty gave me the list today. I don't know what I did with it. Where is it? I think the first one I'm doing is a MGBHS carburetor tune-up.
That'll be Monday, June 19th.
Okay, right. So anyway, I'll send an email out to everybody about that. And
So
if
the
you
new
want,
schedule would be 3 Zoom sessions a month. 2 would be public like this one has been. And then 1 would be more of John giving a presentation like PowerPoint kind of stuff and deeper into the topic. So that would be on the 3rd week of the month, and then 2nd and 4th are the public ones.
in the meantime, let's say I'm going to Minneapolis again on Wednesday to rebuild 4 gearboxes and do a complete lube, I hope, in 3 days. And then, because gearboxes are pretty fast, pretty easy. You just can't be afraid of looking at all those teeth. And then the weekend after that is the Champagne Car Festival in Bloomington, Illinois. And the weekend after that is GT48 in Memphis. So I'll be in all those places. Look forward to seeing you there if you can make it. Dave Quinn, at least, who said he was
When's the one in Champaign?
That's next.
I'll pull it up.
Second through the 4th of June.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, and that's the Champagne Car Festival. It used to be in Champaign, Urbana, Champaign, Illinois. They moved it from there to Bloomington, and I think respelled Champagne from I don't know, AIGN to AGNE.
It's spelled like the beverage. It's always been spelled like the beverage, even when it was held in Champaign, Illinois.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I went with my Caroline was pregnant with our baby, with James. I remember when we went one time, and it was a nice day, and all of a sudden this cold front came through, and the people selling sweatshirts all of a sudden made a killing. It was that was the summer of '92. That was a year after after God got mad and blew up Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines to exact some revenge for the Filipinos throwing us out of Clark Air Force Base in Subic Bay. But that whole summer was like, there's so much ash in the air from that volcano. It was real cold that summer. Anyway, I'm glad George Barberi was on tonight from the hospital. That's pretty intense, from his heart operation. And I thank everyone for being on tonight and adding what you did. And again, if you have questions or you want to pursue something a little more, give me a jingle. I'll see what I can answer for you on the phone and so forth. And I will send those pictures of those second gears. So all kinds of little tricks and little bits of information to have. I've got a lot of information here. So does Barney. Don't pass up on Barney. Barney Gaylord's MGA Guru, MGAguru.com site. He's got a lot of information there. And some of it's applicable to 1275 midgets. Don't know how much is applicable to 1500 midget, but it's an MGA heavy site. A lot of it bleeds over into MGBs. So it's 9:28. It's time to say good night. Thank you, Ray County. Doug Clark, thank you for counting. What'd you say?
Good night, John. Thank you very much. Great
Took lots
job.
of notes. Thank you.
165.
165.
Yeah, that's what I had to.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks,
See you next
John.
time.
Marty. Yeah.
John, you should tell them that we're going to go to Memphis in the middle of June, and both of us are signed up to do tech sessions for them.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
Yep. So Barney and I are both standing in front, in a nice, clean, dry, cool environment behind, in front of, I don't know, dry erase boards or something or other, and gesticulating with parts, about that big and that big around with our hands. And then I'll be out in the parking lot on Tuesday fixing cars. So it's always fun to fix them. So anyway, Barney, thanks very much for that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. It was
Thank you,
nice.
John.
Took lots of notes, and Bob will have a lot to review.
Great. Okay, and 18th and 19th of August, the Doubletree, the Hilton code is XUM, but we'll be sending
idiot.
out, we'll be sending out a note about that, so.
Thanks, John.
Okay, Greg Glassner, look forward to seeing you up at the summer party reunion. Greg was probably one of our summer parties in 1983, I bet. So, long time ago.
A lot of them.
Yep, a lot of them. Yep. All right, thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Good night.
Good night, all.
Good
Thanks a
night.
lot.